if you're looking at this guitar, it might look slightly different to you than all the other guitars that have been on my bench. Um, every guitarist does this, and some do it multiple times, but I am going down another Hendrix rabbit hole again. I always come back with new appreciations, a new ear, listening, hearing new things. And so, I pulled out some books, some old books that I had. This one, Play Like Hendrix. It goes over tunings, gear, and then it also just kind of highlights certain types of playing that he does. Highlights little things that he's doing in between that before then it gives you the whole tablature. And then this one, Signature Licks Jimi Hendrix. They are both Hal Leonard books. And I like to go over them every time I go down this rabbit hole. But it got me thinking, like, I really want to play an upside down Strat. Jimmy had a regular right-handed Strat flipped upside down and then strung properly. So I bought a left-handed Squire. And I haven't done anything to it yet. But here it is. Let's take this thing apart and get it set up. I will say one thing. It did come, in the Squire factory box. I don't know if they knew this, but and if it's going to happen on all left hands. So all lefties out there, be aware. The left-handed tremolo bar that came with the guitar was too small. I actually just picked up a Strat body, right-handed, today, just for parts. And I noticed as I was doing the transaction that it was a left-handed tremolo in that right-handed guitar. Weird. But it actually fit. I was like, great, this is a Squire body, and it has a left-handed tremolo, so it's probably going to fit in there. This is thinner, so I feel like this is more like a Mexican or American trem arm that came with this left-handed guitar. But luckily enough, this one fit. It was the proper thickness. Okay, let's get this thing taken apart because I have plans for this guitar. I'm going to replace the pickups with some Alnico 5 high output Wilkinson M series. And these pickups have the Wilkinson, on the pickup covers, so I got some pickup covers to fit them. And I'm going to put in a Switchcraft Jack, and I'm going to use cloth-covered wire. I'm going to go real vintage with it. One thing that I do plan on doing with this is, in the Jimmy's day, they didn't have 5-way selector switches, so I'm putting a 3-way selector switch in, and it'll be master tone, or master volume, master tone, and then this tone is going to be a blender pot. And I'm going to put a no-load potentiometer in there, where when you click it all the way back between 9 and 10, it clicks and it cuts it off, and then you can turn it on. That blender pot is going to go to the middle pickup so that if I'm in the bridge, I can choose how much middle pickup I want in it. If I'm in the neck, I can choose how much middle pickup I want blended in. So you can still get the in-between positions. But I just never liked the whole volume tone. So it's like a tone for the neck, a tone for the middle, no tone on the bridge. I'd rather just have a master tone that covers all of them, and then use this as a blender pot. This is a Squire body. It's a Squire Sonic. I was surprised. The bone nut is harder than like the typical PVC ones you see. So I was very impressed. Just as far as these Squire Sonics go, I was impressed with the nut that was on this. It was like a harder material than the PVC ones that are kind of like that soft vinyl plastic. So I don't know what they're using for the nut, but it looks good. It looks cut properly too. Also, for the first time, I actually looked in the Squire paperwork that comes with every Squire along with your wrenches. And I never looked in here. I thought it was just like, you know, warranty details, blah, blah, blah. They actually tell you how to set this thing up. It has factory specifications, and it kind of generally goes over the specifications for that. I was pretty, like, impressed. Just open this up and looking inside of it. But, you know, whatever. That's just on, you know, what's going on here. So, yeah, Squire Sonic body, slightly thinner than a, you know, American or a Mexican. I don't mind that. I don't care about it being a little bit thinner. You know, it means it's a little bit lighter. So, yeah, let's tear this thing apart and get to work. It is not the most beautiful shielding job I've ever done, but it is shielded. This Squire Sonic Stratocaster did come with shielding paint on the inside. I even tested it, but shielding paint, I feel like it's so thin, and I've heard mixed things about it. I don't know the truth, but the consensus is it's not as good as, you know, shielding tape, lining it with a copper foil. So I did that. And that's the other nice thing about the Squire Sonic is 3 humbucker routes. I mean, they might as well have just made it a giant swimming pool route. But that is kind of cool that there's 3 humbucker routes inside of this Squire Sonic Stratocaster, which makes the Squire Sonic Stratocaster great for modding. Any modders out there, anyone that wants to, you know, tinker and have all this room here, you got it. You could do whatever. You could put 3 humbuckers in there. You could put HSH. You could do whatever you want with it. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Alright, before I go any further on this, I'm going to put this Switchcraft Jack inside of the Jack boat. Okay, we have the Switchcraft Jack all wired up with pushback fabric. I make the ground a little bit longer, just by a bit than the lead. The lead is going to the pot. I might have to stretch the ground just a little bit further to the back of a different pot maybe, but that's why that looks uneven. And then I obviously twisted them together. Now we are going to feed these through. And the Switchcraft is a lot stiffer, so it's going to hold on to your cable better. The best jack, output jack, would be, what is that called? Pure tone? Full tone? Pure tone? Something like that. And it has 2 grounds and 2 leads, so it is grabbing your jack. It's grabbing the tip of that jack real good. It's not letting go. Anyway, that is done. So the next thing I'm going to do is take all the hardware off of the Pickgaurd, and it has shielding right here for this cavity, but I'm going to shield the whole damn thing, and that way it's enclosed, it's making contact with these little bits of overlapping. Yeah. This is a single ply. Uh-oh. I want triple ply. We'll figure that out later. I'm actually really surprised with this Squire Sonics hardware. I'm used to just, I mean, these are small pots, but the hardware seems to be a little bit more robust, and it's the brand Alpha, and Alpha is made in Korea. Even this switch is a Alpha Korean switch. It's not the best, but it's a lot better than a lot of the cheap Chinese stuff. And yeah, I'm just really surprised by this. Now, I'm used to seeing A 250K, because that's what has always been used. These are C 250K. I don't know what C is. I'm used to A and B, linear and logarithmic. I can't say, I'm tongue twisted. But I gotta see what C is. Is it some kind of different taper? I'm not sure. Anyway, I decided to put it all back together because this is a single ply white, and I really want a 3-ply. You know, where you can see on the edge it's white, black, white, because it's a small detail, but it's a detail that I want. I like 3-ply. Just makes it pop out a little bit more. So no point in disassembling it all any further, and just put it back together. Keep the knobs, because I'll use those. I have to wait till tomorrow for the 3-ply Pickgaurd to arrive before I can continue doing any more work. We are finished. The problem is that there was a lot going on with the wiring that I had to figure out. So I did not record the whole thing. It would have been a very boring, me tracing down wires and leads and going over the wiring diagram just to make sure I had everything in its correct position. But I will explain it to you. So the wiring of this guitar is with a 3-way switch, like the guitars of that era. And the way I wired it is Telecaster style. So it is bridge, bridge and neck, and then neck. So there's no selector for the middle pickup. What I did instead was make we have the master volume, and then we have the tone right after that. I made that first tone, that second knob first tone, a master tone. Then the third tone, or the third knob, second tone, I made that a blend switch, and the middle pickup is directly wired to that. And what happens is it turns the opposite way of the other pickups. It's a no-load pot, so when the volume's down, there's no signal. There's a little click, which is nice because it holds it in position off if I want it to. Then I can blend that middle pickup in. Now, what's additionally special that I did was with the middle pickup, it is out of phase from the others. So I guess you would say that it is in series with the others. In that era of guitars, they had the three-way switch, one position for each pickup. They were not yet doing the in-between positions. However, in the 60s, that is when the guys figured out that they could get an in-between position by placing their selector knob in between the positions. And when they found that out, it had a very unique sound that a lot of them liked. We kind of lost that sound because modern days, they reverse wind the middle pickup from the bridge and neck. Back then, it was just a bin of pickups, and they just pulled the pickups out of the bin. They're all wound the same, and they would put them in their positions because there was no in-between position at that time, just one pickup at a time. So when they discovered the in-between position, they were discovering also an out-of-phase sound. Now the pickups are reverse wound so that it does the hum-canceling parallel type sound, and it doesn't have that same hollow, out-of-phase sound that they used to. So you can wire your middle pickup out of phase easily. There are two wires coming out of your middle pickup. There's your what we call hot, and then there's your ground. Well, normally you'd take your ground to ground and your hot to hot. And because it's reverse wound, it's passing through the coil opposite and then passing into like the neck. You know what I mean? So it's going one way and then into the other way. But we can go from one feeding directly into the other out of phase. Doesn't have hum canceling, but honestly, do you need it? You really don't. It's such a small amount of sound that, especially if you're dealing with other pedals and stuff, that sound it's only when you're not playing that you notice that sound. That hum, 60 cycle hum. So if you take your wires, you take your ground, and you actually use your ground wire as the hot, and then your hot wire as the ground, then you are reversing the reverse wind in your pickup. So this knob blends in that out-of-series middle pickup in any position. So we could have all three pickups going, we could have middle and bridge, or middle and neck, and the middle pickup is always going to be out of phase from the rest. Now, there is no individual middle position. You can't just select the middle pickup anymore. It always will be with one of those other configurations. So that's fine for me because I don't ever just use just the middle pickup. And for most often, I rarely use the middle selection either because I never like the sound of it. But with this, I do like the sound of it because it blends in that out-of-phaseness. So when you're blending in that pickup, you can also select how much or little and find your sweet spot of it. And it's magic. Matter of fact, I put a purple knob right here because it's like a magic tone you're introducing in. I'm still naming it's either going to be like the Mojo, maybe we'll call it the Voodoo tone, the Mojo tone, which is a company which a lot of their components are inside of this guitar. So that is the wiring, and it's awesome. I'll give you some sound samples later. Now, overall, this guitar, it has the same bridge that it came with. This was a Squier Sonic Stratocaster, left-handed. And so the bridge is the same. I swapped out the bridge saddles for the more traditional bent steel ones that would have been on the Fenders of the time. It has, of course, we have the left-handed tremolo bar. It has a made in the USA 3-way selector switch. It has CTS pots, 250K CTS pots, plus the no load pot right in the in this position, which is a Fender, which is a CTS pot. It has a Switchcraft Jack, and it's really firm. I really have to press it in there. It also might be due to limited, because it's a little bit of a bigger jack on the inside. It might be due to limited space, but I don't think it is. On the inside, it might. I'm just thinking it's really stiff, so it really makes contact with your cable. I shielded the crap out of the cavities, even the jack cavity. So it is copper wired, or copper taped all throughout the cavity. The great thing is the routes on the inside of this guitar were great. I didn't have to make any modifications. They fit full-size pots. Got the 3-way Made in America switch. Then I have this. I bought a replacement neck that is maple with the big headstock left-handed. And again, this is eBay. It's coming from China. And it did not show, because they're tricky. They're trying not to get busted for copyright. It didn't show headstock decals, but when it arrived, it had headstock decals. I am both conflicted and happy about this, because it is the black letter font of that kind of late 60s, early 70s with the big headstock that Jimmy had on his Black Beauty. Here is a picture of Jimmy with his Black Beauty. This is actually, I think, one of the last few pictures ever taken of Jimmy before his death, because this was taken at the hotel that he was staying at where he died. So this is the Black Beauty, and I'll also share a picture of him in the studio with it, because that is where this guitar strap comes in. This is a authentic Hendrix Dunlop product, and it is the TTG Studios Hollywood October '68. He was photographed with the Black Beauty and or one of his guitars. I don't know if it was the Black Beauty. Let's see if it's, yeah, Black Beauty, maple neck, and he's photographed playing with this strap. So this is a recreation strap. Also left-handed, so I had to switch the strap button to the what would normally be the lower horn, but it is now the upper horn, the shorter horn. I put the neck on. I put a bone nut from StewMac in, and I only had to do just minimal nut cutting to get the heights right. Now, being that this Chinese neck, I don't think this has a 9.5 radius. At Jimmy's time, it probably would have been 7.5 radius or something even more round. But 9.5 is like the modern. I think this might be a 12. It's a little bit flatter than I'm used to seeing. So there was a little bit of modification because this nut was cut for a 9.5. But we got the nut cut. It is bone, and I got it shaped in there. I have split top vintage nickel tuners that I put in. I had to put the 10 millimeter hole adapter bushings in because the vintage tuners come with the smaller bushing. But you can still use those vintage tuners on modern guitars just by getting the adapter bushings for that more modern size hole. I'm going to show you the headstock here. So everything looks good. And here are, you see the split top tuners. And then here is the back side of them. Because this was a replacement neck, I did have to drill the holes for the tuners as well as the hole for the string tree. Now I have the Jimi Hendrix Fender strings, the Voodoo Child Fender strings. He had a very specific gauge of string that he used, which up here on the lower strings, it was a smaller gauge, and then on the higher strings, we had a 10. The exact gauges are 10, 13, 15, 26, 32, 38. And they really give a good feel to them. I really like this set. I've purchased a bunch of them because there's an Amazon deal where they're $5.99 for the ball end, and I think they might be about around $7 for the bullet end. And that's up to you. I went ball end because I feel that's probably more traditional. I feel the bullets probably came in later. The whole idea of the bullet is that it more conforms to the inside of the tremolo hole where you insert the strings through the body. The bullet makes more contact, more solid contact with the inside of that cavity. And that's, you know, some people swear by the tonality. Yngwie Malmsteen swears by the tonal resonance of that contact with bullet ends. But I have a few bullets, but mostly I get balls because those are probably going to be more traditional. And they are Fender has this special Jimi Hendrix string set, and they're able to get the authentic Hendrix because Hendrix did play Fender strings when he was playing his Strats. And I'll tell you why. Because not only did those strings come with the Fenders, but you know, he had the special string gauge that he used. I imagine he probably just wanted to get the same strings for it. But I have a issue from June 1969 of Guitar Player. Let me grab it real quick. I found this at an antique mall. June 1969, Volume 3, Number 3. It was 75 cents back in the day. And there is a advertisement right here with Jimi Hendrix. It is for Esquire Strings. And this was the VC Squire company that made strings. Now, back in the day, that is who Leo Fender used for the strings on his guitars, and he bought the company for the VC Squire strings, which is what Hendrix used, and I'll show a big picture right here. So rock with Esquire strings. Now, that's where we actually get the name of Squire guitars, is from the Squire strings. Because when they were making import guitars, they didn't want to keep using the Fender name. They wanted to have a separation of the import guitars from their flagship Fender name. And so CBS looked at the names that they own, the companies that they own through the Fender acquisition, and that was one of them, so they named the import guitars Squire. So that's where Squire comes from. It comes from these strings. And that's why, to this day now, Fender has the Jimi Hendrix string gauge set. Additionally to everything I just went over, I did use raw vintage tremolo springs, which have more of that vintage tension on them. I think they're just a little bit more slinky. And there's plenty of pictures. I'll show one right here of Jimi Hendrix, and you can see the back of his guitar, you know, because he took the back plate off. You can see he has all 5 springs in there. Now that set, due to the packaging, it comes with a little piece of foam insert, and they probably put it there so that you're not hearing any kind of string vibration feedback. I did put that piece of foam underneath the springs. Also, when I floated the springs, I did the kind of offset on the claw so that the more higher tension, larger strings are going to have a little bit higher tension on the spring here, and then the spring tension reduces to match the smaller string tension on the lower. And a lot of people say it doesn't matter because it's all connected to the one piece, one bridge. But it does matter actually, because if you have more tension on one side, it is going to lift things. And I've noticed that when setting up a lot of strats, that that there, if all the strings are all the springs are straight, the higher, more trebly strings, the bridge is actually dipped a little bit lower than, because the string tension doesn't have the strength to fight against the springs. Just slightly, you can notice it, you know, if you have a good eye, you can look at the gap under the bridge and you'll see that gap narrow towards the higher end strings. So it is offset and it helps. And then I did the whole Fender factory spec setup on it and floated the bridge appropriately, the string height, the action of relief, as well as the pickups. Now that is where we're going to get into it. These are not staggered pulls, so it didn't really matter about the pulls, although I do have a set of pickups coming with vintage reverse stagger, so left-handed, and since this is right-handed, it's going to have that stagger that maybe Hendrix's guitars had. But I did the setup for the pickup height as if I was going to play this as a normal right-handed guitar, meaning that the treble side is closer and the bass side is lower. But when you reverse the springs, the bass side is now closer and the treble side is lower. I'm trying to recreate that because he wouldn't have adjusted his pickup height much. It probably would have remained very much stock in that regard. People speculate about if Jimi Hendrix modified guitars. Usually it was all of the electronics later that got modified. And Seymour Duncan does have a story of meeting Hendrix and giving him pickups to which they installed right then and there before he went on stage that were possibly a little bit more overwound. So these pickups that are in here were Wilkinson Alnico 5, which would have been used, high output pickups. So recreating that little bit of overwoundness on it. So vintage voiced, you're not going to perfectly recreate vintage pickups, but this gets in the ballpark and it sounds good. So that is what is inside the pickups here. And again, so we have the bridge with that offset kickback, which I think when I do use the bridge on this, it does balance it better. So the bass and the treble are now better balanced to be equal. Before, the treble was really high because it was closer to the bridge, and the bass was lower because it's further away from the bridge. But now, this reverse offset of that pickup actually balances the overall tonality of that pickup a lot better, in my opinion. So what else is special about this? We've gone over the knob, the three-way, the components, the vintage springs, bone nut, string gauge, the strap. I think that is about it. That is my Jimi Hendrix tribute build. And let's do some sound samples on it. Right now I have everything turned off because Jimi Hendrix's pedal rig, is so noisy. And even with, the 60 cycle hum gone, there's all the electronics hums. And these specific pedals, don't like to work together very well, especially if you're doing the traditional, like, Jimi Hendrix pedal chain. They don't like to work well together. And they create all kinds of extra noise and feedback, which I'm guessing Jimmy used to his advantage, all that additional noise. But they really don't like to work well together, so I have everything off at the moment. Quick funny note on that before we get to the sound samples. Jimmy moved pedals around all the time. The order. He was experimenting. So there's the traditional canon. This is Jimi Hendrix pedal chain. But there are photos where even though the pedals are remaining in that same order, if you follow the cables, they were in a different order altogether. Even though that what looked like the Univibe was at the end of the chain, you can follow the pedal wires, and it's either second or first in the chain, and then the wire comes out and wraps around and either goes to the wah or the fuzz or something like that. So, everyone has this idea, the canon of this is Hendrix's pedal chain, but that's based on certain photos, and sometimes maybe it was. But yeah. Also, hey, here's a random one. Behringer Fuzz Bender, based off of the old Tone Bender, Color Sound Tone Bender pedal. Hendrix had one of these. There is a, I think it was the Supa Fuzz is what it was called, not the Super Fuzz or Supra Fuzz or something. I can't remember. Basically, there's one that's an octave. It's red and blue, not that one. There was another one with a different name. Would have been this one. The Fuzz. What's now the Fuzz Bender, but the Color Sound Tone Bender. It was pictured being used at one, I'm guessing, because Jimi Hendrix oftentimes had a lot of his gear stolen. So maybe it was during one show where he had his fuzz face stolen and he just needed fuzz. And that is where randomly this came in. And if you look in the booklet, something not often talked about, but look in your booklet if you have one of these new, and it shows a pedal chain, how to hook this up, a diagram. It actually shows the pedal this way, with this face. But the rest of the rig is a Hendrix type rig. It has wah, octavie, I guess Behringer makes some type of Octavio, into this, into an amp. So, pre-Univibe, but probably because they don't make a Univibe yet. But, they're showing a Hendrix-style pedal chain Behringer for this Fuzz Bender pedal, based probably solo off that one incident of him using a tone bender, probably because his fuzz face got stolen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this guitar. We're going to go through the pedal board, which I'm going to bring up here. Certain pedals are not in that pedal chain because they're noisy. I have it going through this solid state Marshall that you see. I follow the guitar neck and it points right to it. It's solid state 50 watt Marshall amp. I'm remaining on the clean channel because I found that if I use this Joyo British pedal, which is like a Marshall recreation pedal, it's less noisy than using the gain channel on the amp, and works better with the pedals. I'm just trying to minimize noise as much as possible for this sound sample. And I have for my octave, the Electro Harmonix Octavix. So instead of an octave EO, it's Octavix. So Hendrix octave type thing is what they were going for. And I have it unplugged because when I plug this in with the fuzz face, with the Univibe, with the Vox Wah, it is just, it's screaming without even without any of the pedals on, that just the pedal chain itself is just so noisy passing through there. I don't know how to fix that. I have everything on isolated powers. It's just such a noisy rig. So at different times, I will have different pedals plugged in, just specific to what I'm doing. And let's hear how this sounds and what I recreated. I really think that you'll find that this out-of-phase middle pickup blender captures some certain tones that I think Hendrix fans are trying to chase. When you listen to the recordings, also this is in standard E. Yes, Hendrix tuned to E flat for live performances and probably for some of the later recordings. But if you're listening to some of the early recordings, it's all standard E. I found that out by tuning this to E flat and then trying to play along with the recordings. And I'm like, wait a second, something's off here. And I moved up a fret, and there it was. So E standard, we're going to be playing some samples. I'm going to be using this knob, and I think this really does recreate some certain tonal effects that Hendrix found with that wedging the selector in the middle and getting that out of phase middle pickup combined sound that we've lost with the 5-way switch and reverse winding. It gets a tone. I can get a little bit closer, and it also helps brighten up the tone because overall it sounds kind of dark going through some of these pedals and filters that muddy it down. So this actually gives it a brighter and almost like it brings the output down and gives it a brighter, more hollow, brittle tone, which if you've dialed it in right, it gives you some things that you can't normally get. So here we go. So there you have it. That is my Jimi Hendrix tribute guitar in a really cool wiring configuration where you blend in that out-of-phase sound, and I think it's really cool. I'm sorry I didn't switch to any other positions, but hopefully during that demo you could hear where I was blending in the middle out-of-phase pickup sound, and kind of just, it really creates that retro, like, kind of hollow, thin pickup sound. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like it's like a cocteau. It gives it a little bit of that cocteau sound. But here we go. It is Hendrix's Black Beauty. This will be an ongoing project for me. I don't know if I like the purple knob there. I might just switch it out to a white one, just to look more like Jimmy's, I guess. But I love this, and you know, I got one little accessory for it for myself, just just to complete the whole vibe. This is the Tuner-et guitar tuner that looks like, comes in a package that looks like a pack of cigarettes. The tuner looks like a cigarette. It's in the position like this. It clips on there, and it looks like I have a cigarette in my strings, which I don't. The top of it here, this is where the, I guess the ember would be. You plug in your recharger there, your cable to charge it. On the side display here, this is side display where your tuning information is. This is what gets seen. This is what you see. It clips right there underneath the strings like that, and that is just for my own. You really wouldn't use this live, maybe just to have the look like that, just to have the look of a cigarette. But I don't know. I thought it was cool. Complete that whole vibe of all those guys putting their cigarettes in their strings there and then getting a little burn mark on their headstocks. But this is going to be an ever-changing project for me, and I will probably be making others like it. But this is going to be my left-handed one until I find another left-handed body. Because this is the Squier Sonic, it's just a little bit thinner of a body. Not by much. I've held it up to my others, but it is a little bit thinner. I might get another body later on. I did switch out, that's one of the things, the 3-ply pickguard, because it comes with just a single-ply white. So I got the 3-ply pickguard. But other guitars I will make in a Jimi Hendrix type style are going to be right-handed bodies with the upside-down reverse headstock. And then they will have the right-handed pickguard, but with this same kind of reverse angled bridge pickup. So they make pickguards like that, you know, Jimi Hendrix looking ones for a right-handed guitar. And so the next creations I make will be a right-handed body with the Jimi Hendrix pickguard with the reverse and the reverse headstock. But I'll be same thing again. I'll be using 60s voiced Alnico pickups in them. I'll mess around with the different wiring. I think on the next one what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the 5-way selector, because, you know, they used the middle position. They just had to, I just did the 3-way for authenticity. I'll use a 5-way, but I will also wire it in such a way that the middle pickup, I will be able to control how much in or out of phase it is. So you will have all standard 5 positions, but the secondary tone control, it will be wired in such a way that I'm just choosing how much or little in or out of phase happens. So as you go out of phase, you'll actually lose some of that hum canceling. It'll be a very interesting build, but for the most part, it'll be standard 5-way, just with that weird it'll be in or out of phase blender switch that will be used. Yeah. So more projects similar to this, just not with left-handed bodies.